Hey, what is going on, guys? Max Settings here, and welcome back to another review. So in today's video, we are going to be taking a look at the Massdrop X Koss ESP95X Electrostatic Headphone System. That's quite a mouthful of words. This is going to be the first electrostatic headphone that I'm going to be reviewing here on the channel, but don't you worry, I have another one coming up pretty shortly that's going to be quite an interesting one, which I'll show you what that is in just a little bit. But before we get into today's video, I wanted to give a huge shout out to my friend Densetsu over at denfi.com for sending these out for review. He is another audiophile and a really spectacular photographer. So I will link his website down in the description. You can go check out some of his write-ups and his photos. If you're looking for some really cool headphone wallpapers, definitely go check out his photos. They are spectacular. And he's actually also selling these. So I will link his eBay listing for these down in the description if you want to buy these. I believe he's asking $3.99 for them as of the time of filming this video. But yeah, huge shout out to him for sending these out, and now let's continue on. But anyway, so these are Massdrop, or now Drop's, rebranded version of the Koss ESP950. And then the first thing I think we should get out of the way is what is the difference between the ESP95X and the regular Koss ESP950. So the first change between the two is that Massdrop has changed the color of the ESP950 from black to their midnight blue that is used on some of their headphones like the HD6XX and the HD4XX. They changed the pads from a pleather material to a velour, and there's some reports that Dakoni might be making the pads for these, but nothing that confirms that for sure. The ESP950 also came with a leather carrying bag because this system was supposed to be portable. ESP, I believe, stands for Electrostatic System Portable. And the original intent of this entire system was there'd be a leather shoulder bag. You would feed the Energizer with a Discman, and then they gave you an adapter to run the Energizer off of D batteries. So you would just throw all that in the bag and then wear the headphones. So with the Massdrop version, you do not get the leather carrying bag or the adapter to run this off of D batteries. So you're probably not going to be taking the Massdrop version portable, but yeah, so those are the differences between the two. So Massdrop doesn't really give many worthwhile specs for these. Really the only spec they give that's really worth much here is the weight is 353 grams, but I'm pretty sure that is with the cable, as you'll see when we get into the comfort. And the frequency response is 8 to 35,000 hertz, but that doesn't particularly mean anything. Okay, so now let's go over a little overview of the build and what is included in the box. So with these, you get a very large white cardboard box with a bunch of foam, and inside you'll find these and the Energizer, as well as an extension to extend the wire from, I believe, 5 feet to 10 feet, as well as some RCA cables and stuff. So it's nice that they include that and the power brick to power the Energizer here. So then as for the build of the headphones themselves, they are kind of cheap feeling plastic. Everywhere that's that blue color is just a kind of a cheap light feeling plastic, which is probably because these were meant to be portable, so they were going for weight savings, which I guess I can respect. The grills are metal, and the little part here on the headband where the thing slides, that is metal. The headband itself is a pleather with a little piece of plastic that feels kind of loose and moves around, so that's kind of weird. And there's a nice cushiony pad right there. Velour pads, as I already mentioned, that's been changed for the Massdrop version. Attached cable, as most electrostatic headphones are, and Koss's proprietary 5-pin connector for connecting to the Energizer. And then also of note with these, since these were originally meant to be portable, they do come apart, and when you receive them, they will be disassembled. You will have to assemble them. And there's a button right there, and you press the button, and then the cups and the yoke detach from the headband on both sides. So when you get these, they will be taken apart in the box, and you do have to reassemble them. So let's see if I can get it in there. You have to push the button, and there it just clicks in to place, and then you have an assembled set of headphones. Okay, so now for the Energizer. So these headphones do include the Energizer since they are electrostatic. And the Energizer for these is a little bit of a point of controversy with these. Some people say that this Energizer holds these headphones back and that they sound better on a Stax amp. Now, I did not have an adapter to run these on a Stax amp, but if you do, that is something that you can try. But the stock Energizer itself actually does not seem that bad to me, as you'll see when we get into the sound, but I could see possibly how it could be holding these headphones back. So the Energizer itself is really just a plastic box all around. It's not too heavy, but it does have a little bit of weight to it, some rubber feet on the bottom. Here you have your power switch, which this light will light up green if it has power, and it'll light up red if there's something wrong. You have the proprietary plug right there for the headphones, 3.5mm input on the front, power plug here on the back for the power brick, as well as your RCA inputs on the back. And on the front, you have probably the worst part of this Energizer, in my opinion, which is the volume knob. So this Energizer does have a split volume knob like most Stax amps do. But unlike Stax amps, each half of this doesn't like move the other one. So on a Stax one, you can like move one and then just turn it and then they both move. On this one, you can't do that, and they both move independently and they don't move with each other. So to like change the volume, you have to grab both and make sure they are lined up right. Otherwise you get a channel imbalance, and it's kind of annoying, and it's sometimes can be hard to do. Like you start moving it and then one just gets out of alignment. So luckily there are like little lines on it, so you can kind of tell where like one is in reference to the other one, so that helps a little bit. But yeah, the volume knob on this is really annoying, and that was my least favorite thing of using these headphones, is having to deal with that volume knob. But that is the Energizer with these. Nice that that is included, and you don't have to worry about buying an Energizer for these particular electrostatic headphones. And then as for the comfort on these, so these headphones are actually very comfortable. They would receive almost perfect marks, but there's a few little issues with them. So the real reason why they're so comfortable is because they weigh absolutely nothing. Like I mentioned, I think the weight specification that they give for these is the weight with the cable, because there is no way these weigh 325 grams, the headphones themselves, because they feel noticeably lighter on your head than a Sennheiser 600 series headphone, and these are 260 grams. So these definitely do not weigh 325 grams. They feel tremendously lighter than that. The pads are also pretty deep and very large, so your ear fits in them and doesn't hit anything. So where they get points off is because the cups don't swivel, kind of like when I mentioned in the Hi-Fi and Ananda review. A similar thing, although these do have a little bit of give, which is just give in the chassis. So that helps a little bit with some swivel on them. And then the pads, I don't really like the foam. They're kind of crunchy and they're kind of noisy, and they make a little bit of sound on your head when they move. So that kind of bothers me too. But other than that, comfort on these is really good, and I could definitely see these being top tier comfort for a lot of people. So moving on to the sound of these, I'm going to go over the raw frequency response curve of these, and then we're going to talk about why that doesn't tell the entire story. So the bass on these is mostly flat, although there's a little bit of a rise about 70 hertz. So it comes in pretty flat, and then there's a little rise of about 3 or 4 dB at around 70 hertz, and then it flattens back out again until you reach your about 1K, where there's a little bit of shout there in your lower mids. And then after that 1K, it flattens back out a little bit, and it starts to dip down a little bit, and around 3.5K, there's a little bit 3 or 4 dB recession, which carries on mostly throughout the rest of your upper mids until around 5-6K, where you get into your treble. And after that, it comes back up, and your treble comes back a little bit more in line. So these are not particularly bright. They kind of remind me of like Sennheiser treble, more like an HD600 or something. But yeah, these are definitely not bright. These are a pretty relaxed signature, just a little bit of mid shout in the lower mids, a little bit recessed upper mids, and a pretty I'm gonna call it an inline, inoffensive treble with these. So why that frequency curve doesn't tell the entire story with these is that like many electrostatic headphones, these are lacking in dynamics. So even though these have a pretty flat bass, they don't have much impact because they're just not very dynamic. And this is not just with these, a lot of Stax headphones also have that. So they don't have very good bass impact, although they do have better bass impact than a lot of Stax headphones that I've heard. So that is good. And because of that, they do end up sounding a little bit thin and missing some body in the music. And there's going to be people out there that don't like that kind of sound. I've definitely seen reviews of these where people say they don't like it and they think it's worse than their 6XXs or 4XXs or something like that, which I can understand that, but I do think that these are superior in a few ways to a HD6XX. So continuing on after that, the detail on these is actually very good. It definitely is going to outresolve your HD6XX in my opinion, and it definitely is up there or beats the HD660S over here. So the detail is definitely there for a $500 price point, which is the price for the headphones and the Energizer. And then soundstage is also pretty good. They're decently wide, and they also image fairly well. The imaging on them is quite good. And then the other problem with them is their timbre is a bit off. A lot of electrostatic headphones also have a really strange timbre, stacks included. And there's different reasons why this could be. A lot of people say it's because of the decay is too quick, and you get some like that ethereal tone you'll hear people talking about, where things just end too quickly and they almost sound unnatural because they, like, I've heard some people say that means they sound like too good, and that's what ethereal means. It's kind of a strange term with these. But yeah, the timbre on these is kind of weird. It almost is like plasticky, but it's different than that, than what I would describe a traditional plasticky timbre as. But yeah, it's just not a very natural timbre. However, it is not like, it's not the most it's not the most offensive timbre on these. I don't mind it that much, although it's definitely not as natural as especially like an HD6XX or something like that. But overall, that gives these kind of a fun sound. And I actually really enjoy listening to strings on these. Something about the way they present strings and that ethereal kind of sound makes them kind of fun to listen to. They also sound very open and airy, probably because a lot of the bass is missing. They sound kind of thin. But I have heard some people who really like electrostatics say that like headphones like this, the 660 here, sound muddy. It's not muddy, it's just that these are a little more dampened and not quite as open as like an electrostatic headphone is here. So yeah, these definitely sound open and airy. But I think some people are going to have a problem with them sounding thin and lacking body, and with the relatively compressed sound with the lack of dynamics. So as I mentioned earlier, I have another electrostatic in for review, and I did do a little bit of comparison with the Koss here, that headphone being the Stax SR-L700. And these are just in a different league than the Koss here for sure. These are just beat them in pretty much every way: soundstage, imaging, detail. I think the tone on these is a little better, even though it's also quite weird. But yeah, the L700 is just in a different league than the Koss are for sure. But I do like the Koss more than I like the L300, L500, or L300 Limited. I'm not a big fan of any of those headphones. But yeah, you're certainly not going to beat the L700 here, which I do like, spoiler alert. And the review of these will be coming up in a few weeks, or maybe a week, 2 weeks, but this was coming up shortly, so you can be looking forward to the Stax, but they're definitely not on the league of the Koss, even though I did compare them both being electrostatic. So then as for comparison, for $500, I definitely think these are a good deal, and I think they are worth their price point. They are definitely going to give you enough detail for their price, definitely up here with like the 660s. Still think they might be lacking a little bit behind the Sendy Iva, and like the Focal Lex is a little $700, which is a little bit more than these, but if you get a used pair of those, that's pretty close to the price of the Koss here. But for $500, you're definitely getting enough detail, and they're pretty fun and good comfort. The build's a little sketch. But yeah, for the price point, I definitely think they're good, and I would recommend them for $500, especially if you want to try electrostatics and just kind of get a feel for what an electrostatic headphone is kind of like. It's definitely an upgrade as far as detail over like an HD6XX, although definitely going to be a hit in timbre and bass and even dynamics, honestly. You also can look at this as a little cheaper than $500 if you do not already have a headphone amp. Like if this is your first time buying any kind of audiophile grade headphones. You know, not that like the 660s here need an amp per se, but you know, a lot of people are going to run these off of some sort of amp. So if you don't have an amp, this includes the amps. You don't have to buy one, you just need a DAC, or to run it off your onboard, I guess. But depending on your situation, you could look at this as a cost saving of not needing to buy an amp, but that'll depend on your situation. Also keep in mind with these are prone to dust and moisture, so I've been keeping a rag or a bag over top of these to try and keep dust off of them, particularly because they're not mine. So you have to be wary of that. If you live in a very dusty area or you get a lot of dust in your house, keep that in mind, because you do not want to be getting these things dusty. But in conclusion, the ESP95X is a pretty good deal for $500. I do like them quite a good bit. They're definitely an upgrade over your 6XX in terms of detail, although the tone in timbre and dynamics are a little bit lacking. But they're pretty fun. They're a good entry into electrostatic headphones, and I think a lot of people will enjoy them. But anyway, guys, thanks for watching my review of the ESP95Xs here. Once again, huge shout out to denfi.com for sending these over for review. I will link his stuff in the description, as I already mentioned earlier, as well as links to the mini DSP ears graph for these, as well as my Twitter and my contact email. But anyway, I look forward to seeing you all in the next video. Bye.